morning from my side as well. I am here today to talk to you about the Thuringian Research Data Repository REFODAT and give you a relatively short introduction to like a little bit about the history, a little bit about how it works, and then I'm going to try and get in as much demo as I can. So we will be switching over at some point to the actual infrastructure, and I'll try to show you as much of the functionality as we can get into this 1 hour. Alrighty, let's just get started. As I said, first few slides on RefoDat, and then we'll hop over to the actual infrastructure and take a look. Okay, so RefoDat is part of a like storage location for research data logic that goes the following. So during your project, you have some sort of project storage where all your data are collected during your research project for like processing and analysis while you still use it. It could be any kind of storage. Generally, it's a server that you have in your group or with your IT center, something like that, where all data are collected and is generally closed access and used during the project duration, so around like, 3, 4 years, that sort of thing. And then afterwards, when you're done with your project, and looking for where to publish your data, you will do like a cleanup and select data for publication in a repository. And generally, these will be data pertaining to any research results that have come up in your project, and also to be in compliance with the fair data principles. And this will then be a repository. So of course today we're going to talk about a specific repository, REFODAT, but you can also find a whole host of other data repositories on re3data.org. There's like over 3,000 repositories described and listed there. So in a data repository, your access will generally be open for everyone to the data or upon request, even though this is not something that we suggest. And the duration of the data there will be generally 10 years at least to comply with good scientific practice. And then afterwards, after those 10 years, you might want to evaluate which of these data need to be going into like long-term archiving. And that will be like relevant, critical, or very expensive data, like that were expensive in a generation or collection. And generally, this will be like less than 5% of the data that you've actually put out. And the storage location will be some kind of long-term archive. Again, with probably mostly closed access or access upon request. And time frame can be anywhere from 10 years to potentially eternity. And what we're going to be talking about today is the second stage, the repository stage, and how RefoDat provides services and features for you to comply with that. So firstly, though, I want to talk a little bit about finding the right repository for your research data. So generally, as I've already mentioned, what you can do is you can go to re3data.org, which is the registry of research data repositories, and they have a number of filter options where you can find repositories by content, subject, country, access options, all sorts of things, and just have a look whether you can find something for you. Or alternatively, you can inquire with the National Research Data Infrastructure Consortium that is applicable for your field, or with the Specialized Information Services, Forschungsinformationsdienst in German, that is applicable to your field, whether they recommend any research data repositories for your specific area of research. But if that is not the case and you couldn't find anything, there are so-called general or catch-all research data repositories, such as Zenodo's, probably the most well-known and most popular one. But there's other options as well, like B2Share by EUDAT and so on. And relatively new one, which is why we're doing an introduction into it today, is our repository here in Thuringia called REFODAT. Um, so you might wonder, okay, if I have all these options, why should I choose REFODAT? What's so great about REFODAT, or what's so special about REFODAT? So first of all, REFODAT is a free of charge service for all universities and also all universities of applied sciences, so Fachhochschulen in Thuringia, and also for all Thuringian researchers that have an affiliation here. And it allows data to be stored and published at the place of origin in your state, and also has a large data capability. So we can take pretty much any size data without like an upload limit or something like that. REFODAT makes sure that the quality of your data stays intact by using the DataCite metadata scheme and implementing the FAIR principles as much as possible. And it is also possible, which is not an option in all general or catch-all repositories, to register previously published research data. So let's say you have already published these research data in another repository or on another infrastructure, and you already have a persistent identifier for these research data, such a DOI. It is still possible to register this DOI with REFODAT and have it show up in the repository with the metadata that are associated. So that is definitely also an option that you don't see in other repositories a lot. REFODAT also reuses existing systems, the Micro and Mir frameworks, which are similar to the system that the Digital Library of Thuringia, the DBT, runs on. Some of you who do work here might be familiar with the DBT already. So it's a similar system, but there are some differences, and I will be talking about that on the next slide as well. And REFODAT also does offer curation of metadata and basic sanity checks. So it's a little bit different from Zenodo, where you just upload your data and that's it, basically. But I will be talking about the editing process and the submission process in REFODAT in a little while as well. So I've already mentioned the Digitale Bibliothek Thüringen and that it's a similar system. But if you ask yourself, so okay, which do I use for what, is relatively simple. The Digitale Bibliothek Thüringen is mainly used for like text publications and the results of your research project, whereas REFODAT would be used for research data sets and research data that underlie these publications that you might be publishing on DBT, for example. They are both based on the same system and are both connected to our university's bibliography systems and indexed in those. So there are some similarities, but different use cases for these two infrastructures. Yeah, so now I want to talk a little bit about REFODAT as such and what states a data set in REFODAT can actually go into. So firstly, there will be two different kinds of data in REFODAT. Firstly, you've got the metadata, which is the description of your research data, and then you have a data set, which is the combination of the metadata and your actual research data files, which you will be uploading to REFODAT. Once the form is saved in which you've put in your metadata, your record will have the status in process. And in this status, the record will only be visible to the user that put in the metadata. Um, you can specify your metadata there, work on them, and then upload your research data. And in this stage, you as a user will have full read and write access to your record. After that, when you submit the record with the dataset and the metadata, it will change status and be in editorial, and will then be visible to the user as well as the editors of REFODAT. And at this stage, an editor will have a look at your submission and provide feedback to you, the user, that you can then incorporate if necessary. And then afterwards, when the feedback was incorporated, will be the publication step, and the record will change to published and become visible to everyone. The metadata are publicly available by default, even if you choose the closed access option for your record, for your dataset. At this stage, so once it's published, you will not be able to edit the record anymore as a user, but the editing of metadata by the editors of REFODAT will still be possible. So we might still be able to like add something or change metadata in case something's not correct that has been missed in the editing or editorial process. An editorial process is also a good keyword for our next few slides, since I want to like talk a little bit about how that works, actually. So on the right-hand side, you can see all of the editing staff for REFODAT. And this editorial team, so it's like one person from like all the major universities in Thuringia, and this editorial team is automatically notified whenever a submission is handed in. And we then check after various criteria whether the submission complies with the terms of use of REFODAT, and do a quality check of the data. And if necessary, we'll then communicate with you as the submitter, as the user, whether the metadata are complete from our point of view, about data documentation, like is there like a README file or some other kind of documentation, and if necessary, about like file formats and organization. And when all that's cleared up, we will then assign a persistent identifier, a DOI, for your record and publish it on REFODAT. So that's how it works. Yeah, so that's a very quick and dirty overview of the editorial process. I'm not going to go into too much more detail about how all of that works. Is generally all you need to know is that there is an editorial process. You will receive feedback from the editors that you can then incorporate, and then afterwards, next step is publication. So it's a little bit different from repositories like Zenodo. Okay, so right now, I would now like to have an actual look at the REFODAT repository in practice, so all the steps up to the data publication. I will be showing you this on the slides, and then afterwards we will be heading over to the actual system and have a look at what we just saw on the slides in practice, basically. Okay, so let's start with the registration process. If you're a new user, haven't used REFODAT before, you will have to register an account. Generally, if you're already a member of a Thuringian university, you will use the first option up here and will be able to log in via a single sign-on shibboleth with your normal university account and credentials. So you don't actually have to like register a new account or anything like that. If you are not a member of a Thuringian university, for example, if you are associated with a research project that has Thuringian researchers as well, and you want to also publish on REFODAT, you can register a local account. Um, but for most of you, this will generally not be necessary. You'll just be using the first option. After you've registered your account or signed on, you can then submit or register a dataset. So I talked about this a little bit earlier. If you already have your dataset published elsewhere, you already have a DOI, you can use the right-hand option, register only, and just put in your DOI and edit and register your data record. This is also possible if you do not yet have a DOI, but your data are already published, then you can also use this right-hand step. Otherwise, if this is a new publication, you will use the left-hand option, submit, where you will create an entirely new data record and upload your data to REFODAT. Then in the next step, you will enter or adopt the metadata that you already have or enter completely new ones. We have a number of mandatory fields in the metadata entry mask, which will be shown by these red boxes right here. So mandatory fields are title of the dataset, authors, DNB subject group, so what subject is your data belonging to, date of publication, resource type, license, access authorization, so which kind of access option do you want to choose, and your institution. And once you have input all your metadata and saved the record, you will see that the status of your record will change to in process right here. So we already talked about that a little bit earlier about the different statuses that your data set can be in. So this happens after you've saved your metadata. And then you will, on the right-hand side, receive some notes or issues, and might get some instructions for you to make the appropriate adjustments. So for example, if you've forgotten to provide an abstract for your data set, you will get a notification, please provide an abstract. Or if you haven't chosen any keywords whatsoever, REFODAT will tell you no keywords were given, please specify some keywords. And so on and so forth. So it's always a good idea to look at these issues that pop up and just like make the appropriate adjustments. And then once you've done that, you can either upload your files directly from your device, wherever you're using REFODAT from, or you can also add files remotely from a server or cloud via an upload link, like a URL. This is generally also the option that you might want to use if your upload is relatively large in size and it might take a while to upload, since it works asynchronically, so you don't actually have to be at your computer for this to work. It can work in the background. So this is a good option for anyone with large data sizes. And once you've done all that, you've uploaded your data, you've edited your metadata, you've saved them, you can then start your publication. Um, Also, once no more notes are displayed, you can then hand the record over to the editorial team, and you would generally do this by pushing the button Start Publication. This will then take the record out of your hand, hand it over to us, we'll get a notification. I've already talked a little bit about the different access statuses of the data record that you can select from. Generally, what you will select probably is no restrictions. That means the file can be downloaded and viewed normally according to the usage license pretty much by everybody. So this is your standard open access option. You can also choose the closed access options where the files themselves are not visible, but can be viewable with an access key that you can generate. Or you might want to choose external access, which is the option that you choose if there is a link to an external platforms where the files are actually located. So this will mostly be the case if you've registered a data set that's already published elsewhere. Um, so that's also the default if you choose that option. Um, Now, with the no restrictions, basically that is where you're done. If you do opt for the closed access and might want people to be able to view them, like from your group or your project, but not everyone else, you might want to create a so-called access key for this record. Um, so there are several use cases for this. One is if the record is still in progress, so not even published yet, and you still want people to work on the metadata or be able to just see the record, or for access assignment after a closed publication, as I just said. These are like the two basic user scenarios. And to do that, you would go under actions, manage access keys, and then generate an access key. But I will hopefully have enough time to also show you this on the actual system in a little bit. Now, the person receiving your access key and trying to access your data needs the URL to the record. If the data set is unpublished yet. And then they will be able to access this record. I've got here a screenshot of a test data set. And we'll then go to actions, activate access key, and be able to access the data set that way. And the person who owns the data record then receives an email with the message and an email and the email address of the requesting person. This is if you don't really have an access key yet and don't have anything to activate, you can request an access key via the request form. So if you basically see a closed data set, you don't have access to it, you can request that the person generate a key, send it to you via your email address. Um, Now, of course, there's also some other features that REFODAT provides. So you can search all the publications and records that are available on REFODAT via genre, access type, file types, languages, and so on. So that you can actually see what's being published. We do have some help pages for you. So first of all, the terms of use where we lay out exactly what the policy of REFODAT is with regards to uploading, publishing, etc. And we also do have some notes. So we have a step-by-step publishing your research data, which guides you through the entire process in a lot of detail, probably more detail than I can manage today. We talk about a little bit about supported licenses, instructions for filling out the metadata form if you haven't done that yet. There is a lot of stuff about how to do that. And then there is also a help page for controlling access to your data set. So this will be dealing mostly with granting access via keys that I just talked about now. All right. And then to end this like short presentation, there's some links for further information. So the repository itself is accessible via the link up top. We do have a website about the project as well. There's a concept paper about it. And if you have any questions or need any support about REFODAT whatsoever, the support email is also on this last slide. Mm. So I want to make sure, or I want to let you know, I'm using for this demo, I'm using the test instance of REFODAT, so we're not like in a live system right now. But it basically works the exact same way that REFODAT itself will also work. So it's there's not really any difference for you as a user. Um, Okay, so firstly, I want to show you how to switch from German to English. It's extremely simple, but since we're doing an English presentation, I want to do that right now. You're going to click on the top right corner and switch from German to English, and then you've got the entirety of the website um, in English. Uh, Before we start actually doing a submission process, I want to quickly show you the terms of use, which you can find here. And the notes that I was just talking about. So as I said, we have a step-by-step guide for publishing your research data on the page, which will show you exactly what to do. We have got a guide for supported licenses. So this will show you all the licenses that are available to choose from on REFODAT. And it will also specify how to proceed if there's a license you want to choose, but it's not supported. Basically, what you would do is just write us an email, and we'll try to add it. Then there is a help page about instructions for filling out the metadata form itself, which we're going to look at in a minute, which will tell you pretty much exactly how you're going to do all of that, fill it out. And then the last one that I've already spoken about will tell you how to control access to your data set with like access keys and such. All right, so that's basically it. Let's go back to start page. So what we're going to do first is we want to log into the system. And we're going to go to the login page by clicking the button login. So as I said, generally you as a member of Thuringian University, which you hopefully are, if not, that's also fine, you will use the login with a single sign-on, the shibboleth. I'm not going to show that right now because if I log in with my shibboleth, I will be an admin or editor, which I don't want for the purpose of this demonstration. So I've got a local account which I will log in with right now. And there we go. So you can see now on the top right corner that I'm logged in. That I can now start submitting. I also have like my records and a browse option here. The browse option is basically just searching the records that are there. My records, there won't be anything in there yet because I haven't uploaded anything yet with this local account. So we're going to go to submit. And here you can see, as I showed you on the slides, that on the right-hand side, we have the register only option. I already explained that in the slides. We're not going to do this right now. What we're going to be focusing on is the left-hand option, submit, via which we're going to create a new data record. And for that, I'm just going to click on create a new data record. And then there we go. This form will open up. And that is exactly the metadata form that I've already showed you in some of the slides, and that you're going to be filling out. So basically, you're going to start, and as I already said, like everything that's mandatory, you can see here, is going to have one of these red boxes around the metadata field. So you will know exactly which ones you have to fill in. However, we do encourage you to fill in as much metadata as you possibly can, since that will make sure that your data set will become reusable and transparent and sustainable, which is what we generally would like to achieve with making a data record public. Now, we can just give it any title. Generally, would like to give it a more speaking title than this. So whatever your data set is called, give it that title. You can also give it a subtitle if you so wish. I'm not going to do that right now. And then the next field that is important that you will want to fill out is the author. Now, you can just basically type your name in here, and I'm going to do the full name. It's going to be a little bit easier, and then click search. And then it's going to already search a number of sites for whether there is an identifier for you as an author, as a person. You can see right here for Rex Jessica, which is my name, it finds an orchid. This also happens to be my orchid. Which I can then just click on, check, is it actually my orchid? Yes, it is. And then if I'm sure, okay, this is me, I want to tag this this identifier for my person, can just click on the check mark. There we go, and I will automatically add this identifier to my record. If I click on here, I'll see, okay, yeah, it's added the orchid. Wonderful. Now, if I have several authors, I can also duplicate this field by just clicking the plus sign, which takes a little while. There we go. And add another author. If I go into the drop-down menu right here, I can also see that there are different roles that I can specify. For example, if I have an author and a contributor, which often happens when creating a data set, I can also add a contributor here or many other different roles that you might have, such as programmer, publisher, etc., thesis advisor, reviewer, that sort of thing. But I think mostly your use case will be that you have another contributor or several authors that you might want to add. And then you can go through the exact same process with searching for an identifier and adding that as I did with my own name. I'm going to remove this field though. We don't want that right now. There we go. Then the next metadata field that we have here is what type this author is. Generally, it will be a person, but you can also add a corporation as the author, which we're not going to do right now. So we will put here, or you can put here the term of address. You don't have to, but you can, and the affiliation with the raw ID if you choose a corporation, for example. So raw ID is basically an ID that corporations or like other entities like that have. For example, university will generally have a raw ID. Okay. No, oh, it didn't actually take away the contributor one. We can try that right now. There we go. Nope, still didn't do it. It's not so important. So then you would move on to descriptions. And the first thing you have here is your abstract. And you can choose which language your abstract should be in. The default, if you're in the English language setting, will be English. And the abstract itself will also be the default setting. You can also add other descriptions, such as a table of contents, your description of your methods, technical information, serious information, or other information such as that. So to do that, you will again on the right-hand side click the plus sign. Yeah, it takes a while. There we go. And then you've just duplicated this metadata field, and you can, for example, add a table of contents to your abstract. So in your abstract, you would just write a description. I'm just going to write standard description right now. Obviously, your description should be a bit more detailed than that. Try to make it at least a couple of sentences that really describe what your data set is all about, how people can understand what is in the data files that they're looking at. As I said, you can add a table of contents, add methodology and such. The more information generally, the better. When you've done that and you are happy with all of your descriptions that you've given, you can move on to date. And generally, you will here have your published date, which is mostly going to be the date on which you're going to publish the record. You can add additional dates as well. If you go to this drop-down menu right here, you have all these different options. The date that the data were copyrighted, collected, created, submitted, updated, and so on and so forth. So if some of these are important for your data set, sometimes you do want to specify when you've created something or collected something, you can use these data fields. And if you want to say, okay, I've collected these data on a specific date, you can use the date option. Or if you say no, but I've actually collected these data over a period of time, you can use the time period option, which will then give you a range of data that you can specify and put in here. And this is basically possible for all of these different dates. Not for the published date, of course. That's generally a specific date. Now we're going to close this, so I'm not going to do that right now. We're going to be happy with just the publication date for now. When you've done all that, you can move on to more information. Now, this is going to be relatively important part of your metadata since it contains the subject category of the DNB, the Deutsche Nationalbibliothek, which is a mandatory field, as well as your institution, which is also a mandatory field. But we're going to go through it step by step. So firstly, you're going to select which language your data set is going to be in. Is it going to be English? In my case, yes, I am going to upload an English-speaking data set. But you can also add more languages, yet again, by clicking the plus on the right-hand side of this data field, and then just entering a language. As you see, you have two preset choices, German and English, but you can also specify different languages in the free text field. And add those as well if necessary. Now, With the subject field that you want to select, these are basically given by DNB as is. You can either scroll down the list and pick one, or you can also search in the free text field for one that is most appropriate for your data set. I am going to just find mine by saying political science, since what I'm going to upload is the results of the European election. And I'm going to specify it like that. Yet again here, if you have several categories that your data set might fall into, you can also add another DNB subject category by going on the plus sign. Then you're going to select what type of resource you're actually uploading, and by default, this will be a data set. There are other options as well, such as like software, model, stuff like that. But generally, or audiovisual might also be an option that will happen every now and then. But generally, it will be data set that you're going to specify. Next up will be your license that you want to apply to your data. Default setting is CC BY 4.0. But I've already shown you've got a list of different licenses that you can choose from. If your license that you would like to choose and like to work with is not in this list, you have the option of just writing us an email, and we might be able to add it to the list for you to choose from. Now, the next one is something that we've already seen in the slide, is about the access permissions. So we already talked about generally, and also what we're going to choose right now is that we're going to have or place no restrictions on the access options to this data set. This is what we're going to choose. If we want closed access, so we don't want the file to be publicly visible, that's what we also can choose. And then if we have a registered data set that's already published elsewhere and is already available on an external platform, we're going to use external access. Right now, I'm going to go to no restrictions. Then the next mandatory field will be your institution. And we have here a list of all the different institutions that are available in Thuringia already. I'm going to use the free text search and just specify, okay, I am from TU Ilmenau. You have the option of also specifying your faculty. They're in here if you want. I'm going to go with TU Ilmenau for this one. Okay, so that's going to be that. And then you will move on to your keywords. We do recommend adding at least one keyword, but generally 1 to 3 is best. So I'm going to just search for a few keywords here. No results found. That's fine. So it doesn't want me, or it doesn't have this keyword yet in the database. So I can just add a free subject, subject type. You can just select topic. Then the topic will be elections, choose language. It's in English. And then you click add and you have your keyword. And you can do that with a number of keywords. As I said, we suggest up to like 3, even more keywords is also fine. But it's always good to have keywords so that people can actually find your entry by the keyword that they're looking for if they do browse REFODAT. You can also add a geographic place. If you search here, it will pop up different places that you can look for. So if this is something that you need for your data set, for example, if you have a geographical data set, you can put either that in, or you can click add coordinates and then use the map to actually generate these coordinates for you. I'm not going to go into too much detail right now because we only have like 10 minutes left, so I'm not gonna show that right now. When you're done with the keywords, you're going to go on to technical details, and you're going to give. So in the technical details, we would like you to specify the size of your data roughly. I'm just going to say, okay, mine is like 50 kilobytes, which is really not that big. And then to specify a format, mine is going to be CSV. So it's going to be a comma separated values table. If your data have several formats, for example, if you, like Kevin said, you upload a zip file with different data files in there and they have different formats, you can yet again specify that by clicking the plus and adding all the formats that you need to add. And then you're going to go to funding. We don't really have funding for this data set right here, but if you have a funder, like let's say DFG, you can specify that here. You might want to write Deutsche Forschungsgemeinschaft. If you have a funder ID, you can either get that via Crossref, ISNI, RAW, or other, or you can identify a unique funding identity if it's not in the system. You can specify that here. You can give the title of your grant or your project and your grant number as well. And you can even link via URI, like a web page or something of the sort, to the funding information if you have one available. However, as I said, we're not going to do that right now. It's also not a mandatory field. So we're not going to do that. And lastly, the last section in this metadata field or metadata mask that you are required to fill in is related resources. Now, this will be an excellent section to use if you have, for example, a publication that your data set is related to or underlying. You can then specify here, okay, this resource that I'm specifying here describes this data set, for example. And then you can link a record that's already here. Or you can also select an identifier that you want to put in. For example, let's say you have already got a DOI for your paper that you want to link to your data set here. You can then put in this DOI, this record over here. You can specify a title for the record, for the resource that you're trying to link to your data set. And then you can specify what kind of resource it actually is. For example, a journal article. Excuse me. And then you can even give a link to the journal article as well next to the identifier if you so wish. Now, we're not going to do that right now because we don't really have one available to link, but you should definitely make use of this related resource and the linking that is provided here to link all of the stuff that actually is linked to your data set so that people will have the convenience of easily looking at the associated journal article or conference paper or whatever it might be. Now, we're not going to do that. What we're going to do is say we're done with filling in all our metadata and click Save. There we go. Now, immediately, what you can see is two things. Firstly, we have created this test set right now. It is in process, which means you can still look at it, you can still edit it, and it has also received a mods ID up here. So it's an actual record now in the system. Now, we're going to look at our notes. The validation of the dataset's metadata revealed some issues. show issues. Keywords without specifying an authority file were given. Yeah, okay. This is going to be a general note if you have a free keyword, so that's not too much of an issue. So we can disregard that for now. But generally, this is what you want to do when you've created your record and it's in process. You want to look at your issues, see whether there's any additional hints. Um, Now that we have our metadata record, it's down here. It's not particularly detailed since we're just doing a demo. It will probably look a lot more detailed for you. You can then upload your data, which is you can either drop files or directories to attach in here, or you can use the browse button through which you can browse your device and just find whatever data file you want to use. Or as I said, you can also use the remote upload link via URL. Just provide a URL where your data are at, where your data are located, and drop it in here. What we're going to do is we're going to browse though and going to upload our CSV files. There we go. As I said, this is just some data from the EU elections. And then we've got our data uploaded to our record right here. Now, as soon as we've done that, you can see that we can now actually click on Start Publication and basically hand over this entire record with our metadata, our data set that's affiliated to it, to the editors. And you will receive a note that that's exactly what you're doing. And once you do that, you have no more way of editing this record. That's just what this warning is. You're going to say Start Publication. And there we go. As soon as you've clicked this button, you can see your record has changed status and is now in editorial. And at this point, the editors will be receiving an email and will be reviewing your data set. And for now, you can see that this is closed and not published yet, but in editorial. Okay, I can see we only have like 4 more minutes. Any questions up to here? Because this is basically the publishing or submission process that I wanted to show you. If not, I want to quickly see if I can still go and show you access keys. So we talked about some data sets being in closed access, and then if that is the case, and you click on one of these data sets, you will be shown this message. You don't have the required rights to see attached files because it's closed access. Now you have two options. You can either submit a request for an access key via this form right here. So you click on it, you enter message, write the data author a message why you want access to this data set. And if you just type something in, if you hit send, this message will be sent to the author of the data set, and they can then provide you an access key. And another option to do this is actually via actions. And if you already have an access key that you provided by the person that uploaded this data set, you can just click on this, activate access key. Now I'm going to cheat. I already have it right here. And copy that, put the access key in and say save. And there we go. Now I have access to this closed data set and can actually look at it, open it, and so on and so forth. Now, since we're like 2 minutes to 10, I think I'm not going to show how to generate keys yet, but leave it at that. And thank you for your attention and for your participation in the questions. Are there any more questions that we haven't answered yet as to REFODAT, the submission process, the features, or anything like that?